Hi everyone, welcome to this new video. Today I want to talk about the mimic and how the ghost actually works. I'm so tired of people not knowing how it works, and in general and it happens in a lot of similar games. Not only the RNG in general can be buggy, sure, I can agree with that because I definitely had it happening more than once in very clear situations, but there's a tendency to just make up random stuff. And while it's totally understandable if you're a new player, you're trying to learn based off behavior, we're all human, we all make mistakes. But when it's people on TikTok or other YouTube videos and they just straight up make content just for engagement and not actually trying to help new players, it bothers me a lot. And also because I'm a petty individual, here's a clip when I tried a public random lobby. There, perfect.
Oh,
First mimic of the day.
I thought she's got orbs.
Orbs is an ability for the mimic. Dude. To make this easier to follow, I'm just gonna divide this video kinda in categories. You can browse through the different chapters by clicking on the option. Let's start from the bare minimum. The mimic is a ghost that, as in per name, mimics other ghosts. First off, first false fact, the mimic does in fact have its own behaviors. Because I know some people think that the mimic is always ever gonna copy others. No, it can copy all the other ghost types, but it can also have, we can call it a blank state. On the wiki they call it a blank state, so we'll use that term too, which is the mimic itself. Now it doesn't have any particular abilities, it's a default ghost with nothing in particular, no behavior that we can actually recognize, and even during hunts is pretty much one of the normal ghosts. So much, in fact, that the mimic starts as its blank state, so starts by being itself the moment the game starts. It's gonna eventually change and mimic another ghost. But before that, the moment you get in and you start looking around and you hear stuff getting thrown or stuff like that, that's the blank state. I've also seen people saying that the mimic that never changes, so it copies one ghost until the end of the game, which is not true, or at the opposite, that it mandatorily changes between hunts. No, and that's why I don't remember what video it was specifically, but during a weekly challenge, I said during the stream, and I kept it for the video, I specified that for that challenge, but in general, I suggest you waiting 3 hunts to make sure that it's not a mimic, to see if it actually changes behavior. And that's because the mimic will change multiple times in a specific range of timer between 30 seconds and 2 minutes. So every 2 minutes max is gonna change to a different ghost. It doesn't mean necessarily that it did change. Maybe in this specific situation, the mimic is gonna change in a minute, but it already did a hunt before the first minute was completed. Let's imagine for a second that in front of us we have the statistics of the mimic. We're gonna have a line or a dot that signifies when it's gonna change. It's programmed that way. It's gonna be a random number that gets picked between those two. If the mimic hunts, obviously it's still gonna be the previous ghost that it's mimicking. Now let's talk about the evidence and ability, because this is the one that bothers me so much. I know that it's a recurring meme or joke, and that's super funny itself, but there's people that, because they see this recurring meme of, oh, if it was me that would have been a mimic, people genuinely think that the mimic can just do everything and completely throw you off. So let's clarify this. First off, the mimic has 3 evidences: spirit box, UV, and freezing temps. And if you're a new player, or like the one we saw in the clip, you might think, well, but what about the orbs? You go ahead and try to click orbs and see if a mimic shows up in the potential ghost in your journal. It doesn't, because it said very clearly that it's the ability. The mimic can copy everything from a ghost except for evidences and its orbs. It will never not have orbs. And because they're counted as an ability, they will always show up. If you were to play zero evidence and you see orbs, that's 100% a mimic, and that's because it's the ability. So even taking away orbs for a second, because they could be from the ability, even if it's not evidence, still it's the ability. If we take away these four pieces of evidence, everything else on our journal cannot be mimicked. If you get those types of evidence, it is not a mimic. It cannot be. And because of that, it cannot copy behaviors. The mimic will never be able to copy the Goryo's ability to only show up on camera through the dots. It physically cannot do that because the mimic can copy behaviors, abilities, and it can copy abilities related to its own evidences. What this means in particular is that the mimic can copy the Moroi curse if it's currently mimicking a Moroi. It can copy the Diogen heavy breathing, and it can copy the fingerprint, the six fingers mutation from the Obaki with UV. And it can only do this because these are its own evidences. Now, what about abilities or characteristics that are related to other ghosts but outside of the hunts? Again, if not related to a piece of evidence, the mimic can mimic all of them. If a mimic is mimicking a wraith, it's not gonna step in salt. Also, while the mimic is mimicking, it does not mean that it's not gonna give you its pieces of evidence. It will, it's just a bit harder. In general, the UV for the mimic is one of the hardest ones to get, just because in general UV, as you like level up and go in higher difficulties, UV it's kind of a tricky one. Often it depends on probability, or if you were already there when it touched something, because maybe it did leave a UV trace, but you didn't get to check fast enough, and so it disappeared. But aside from that, no, the mimic is not going to hide its own evidence or pretend to have another evidence, nothing of the sort. While we're here, I also want to tell you about some very specific behaviors. First off, if it mimics a Thay, the age is gonna be pretty young. I believe it's within like 0 and 10, 0 and 20, something like that. If you don't know, the Thay is the ghost that starts off very young and then ages as you're sitting in the ghost room. The mimic, however, when it mimics a Thay, it's always gonna be extremely fast. So if we're thinking like it's a mimic and it's late game, so you have really low sanity, we are prone to believe that something with that speed is gonna be either a mimic mimicking a Thay or a Moroi. Speaking of Moroi, and since I talked about the curse as well, how it can in fact use the curse ability, yes, it will curse you, but the curse will disappear when the mimic mimics another ghost type. And also for the Banshee, if the mimic is mimicking it, as we said, yes, you can get the Banshee scream. The target is chosen randomly. If it happens to mimic again a Banshee, it might not be you the target again, but be your friend. Also, super cool. I personally have not seen it yet. I've seen it in other people's videos, but I've never seen it myself. The mimic will use UV on the front door of the map that you're at if it uses a U-ray, the U-ray ability to close the door outside of hunts or events. So yeah, this is pretty much how a mimic actually works. If you have any more questions or any topic that you would like me to discuss about Phasmo, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Like this video if you will. That's gonna help YouTube know that it's not completely trash. I stream at the very least every Monday Phasmo on Twitch. I do try to stream it on YouTube as well, but the only place where I can guarantee the stream is on Twitch because that's where I normally stream in general. So if you ever want to stop by, I would love to be able to talk to you. And if you're at least 18 and I have space in my lobby, you can just freely ask if you want to join and we'll get to play together. So with all of this said, I hope I helped you out. I hope you understand now how the mimic actually works. I'm sorry if some people might feel attacked for their ignorance. As I said, my frustration is related to specific individuals, not simply people who are learning, because that would be kind of stupid of me, to be honest. I hope you have an amazing day. Good luck with your hunts. Bye bye.